Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Katische Haberfeld. She is a soul therapist and host of the Infinite Life podcast. She works with the eternal Mindstream, helping you uncover limiting beliefs and energetic beings that are holding you back from achieving your soul purpose. Today we'll be talking about the eternal Mindstream, your soul's path, and working with your higher self. Katische, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is the first time we've come across someone that coaches light workers and starseeds. How did that happen?
Well, the particular type of clientele that I attract is because of who I am and who I surround myself with. So I get a lot of clients who I meet through social media, and they're just attracted to the same kind of posts and groups as I've been in. I'm not one of these people that just goes and tries to bombard people on Facebook groups. I think they're just naturally attracted to me. What I find is that each therapist of any kind attracts a certain kind of clientele, and these just seem to be very spiritual people who would call themselves some kind of a spiritual practitioner seem to end up being my clients. It's just the way it's gone, yeah.
Well, we are hearing that word light workers an awful lot these days in many of the different circles. It seems as if they've incarnated into this time because they have some kind of a mission. Now, working with these people, do you have any insight into what their purpose is?
Sure. These are all just terms that other people self-identify with. To me, at the end of the day, you're just a human being, and your name is Katische or Johnny or whatever. People who would classify themselves as light workers see that they are here to help people to get through struggles. People who may be feeling alone, who may feel the effects of depression or anxiety or going through a lot of trauma in their lifetime. So literally they're here to be the light, to shine them in the direction, to heal, to transmute, to transform what's going on in their life so that they can then feel good about themselves and do what it is that they're passionate about rather than feeling like there's no one that understands them. So that's what my understanding of a light worker is, somebody who has been there possibly in other lifetimes with the same struggle, and in this lifetime has chosen to help people.
Speaking of other lifetimes, we often hear about starseeds and how many of the people that are incarnated into this current timeline came from different planets, different star systems. Do your clients talk about that?
So, yes, I have done a whole season of my podcast just recently, the previous season, about starseeds. Now, I am different to other people. Originally, I didn't understand that it was possible to have another lifetime on a different planet. But through the sessions that I conducted with my clients, and it happened with one client going spontaneously back to a past lifetime on a different planet. I didn't even know the planet existed before that happened. And I was like, okay, what's happening here? And then I got curious and fascinated about it. So that's where that started from. My understanding, having conducted a lot of sessions now, is that all of us have to have come from somewhere else. There was a point in time before Earth existed. We would be quite narrow-minded to think that our energy forms, because energy cannot be destroyed, only ever existed on Earth. And so although a lot of people identify with being a star seed from a particular location, in reality and in truth, we've been in multiple locations, in multiple dimensions many, many, many times. We don't actually originate just from one location. So you may have been on many, many locations, most of which don't have a name that is in our current human knowledge or lexicology. It's just the way that life has evolved. It evolves on multiple locations, and you just are here working through a series of incarnations on Earth right now. But because there is no such thing as time except for on Earth, it's a human construct, we have this belief that time is linear, and therefore there's only the you of right this moment right now, when in all actuation, all souls originated at the same time and all incarnations are happening at the same time, because there's only one moment, and that is the now moment. So there's you here, and if you want to make it up, there's the you that lives on Venus or wherever you want to be, or some constellation, whatever comes to your mind. There's you that chose to live in 1852. There's you from 3000 BC. You're all existing all at once because you can never not be. So yes, we have all been starseeds at some point. Some people just really identify with it because they're needing to do something or bring in some kind of knowledge that's helpful for humanity at this period of time. And it's kind of trendy at the moment. If you go look on Instagram or YouTube, people like to talk about it. But the thing is that the wisdom that we get from other beings, from having an incarnation in other locations, is no superior than being a human being. It's just different lessons that we learn, different challenges that we go through, different approaches of doing things. And the most important thing that my clients have gained an understanding of is that they need to identify with who they are right now, because that's who they are. They may have been 750 other beings in other locations, and that's wonderful, and it's interesting, and it's great to find out who they were and what they did and what skills they can bring forward. Anything that they need to release, that can be released. But you of here, that's why you're here right now. Just helps them get an understanding of why they are the way they are, but then really solidify and come back to reality into you're a human being on Earth right now in 2023.
Your practice does incorporate mediumship as well as regression sessions. What gave you the idea to combine the two, or was it just kind of a no-brainer?
Well, it just happened automatically, because when we're in a session, not only is the person who's the client in a hypnotic state, but I have to get really, really focused and hold the space, hold the energy to conduct that session. And what I noticed was that because of my various clairs, I can see and hear and know things that the client may not even be focused on the time. So for an example, I can say to them, look to the left. And when they look to the left, they can see something really important to what's going on in this scene that they need to see, that they might have been too ensconced in a particular emotion at that time and they were missing something in the scene. When I say I bring mediumship in, it's because I can actually see what's happening and I can communicate with other people in the past life memory. Importantly, I can see if there's somebody in the scene that we've gone back to in time, and this happens quite frequently, if there is a spirit in that scene who is not crossed over, who is hanging around as a ghost, so to speak, and we can cross them over. So it's unintentional mediumship, but it's just one of those key skills that I have. And it also means that if we are in the state after visiting a lifetime, which we call the life between lives, where you're receiving the wisdom and the knowledge from your higher self about the lessons learned in that lifetime, I can also say, is there a family member who has crossed over, who has an important or urgent message that wants to come through today? And then the client can also then, in their own mind, hear the message from, say, their father or sister that wants to tell them something, so they can receive mediumship messages themselves inside their own head that I have facilitated. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually, completely. Pretty awesome to say the very least. So past lives, right? When you're in a session and you're bringing someone back to 1852 or the French Revolution, whatever it might be, is that like seeing a recording, or are you actually entering a realm where you can actually interact with these people?
So you're interacting, and each client sees it differently depending upon what their core strengths are. So some people will see it like a still picture, but then they feel the emotion and they feel what's going on. So, for example, if you're about to be hurt in a situation, you will get the panic, you will get the anxiety, that sort of stuff very briefly, which lets you know that this is real and happening in real time rather than something that you're making up. Some clients have really good senses and they can see it. They see it like a real 3D movie that's happening before their eyes. So it really just depends upon the client and what they're experiencing. But yes, I get them to turn and look at people. I get them to ask people's questions. I get them to look into people's eyes. They feel the emotion. They can understand what somebody else is saying to them. It's very visual. The easiest way that I can describe it is if you wanted to remember something that was really interesting that happened to you a month ago, right? You might just stop for a moment, you access that memory and you go back to it. And however you replay that memory in your mind right now is how you're going to replay a memory of another lifetime. It's exactly the same thing. You're just accessing a memory in the filing cabinet of all memories of all time.
But for some people, it might seem like going back in time and interacting with that particular environment. For some.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for some, yeah.
Wow, that's wild. And I noticed that you mentioned life in between lives. I know that's one step further where you're in between incarnations. At least that's what I've been told. Have you witnessed things like the life review, the council, family members, people that you recognize, or your clients have had that experience?
In every session, we do a life review after each life visited. That's the whole point. That's why it's therapy, is because what we want to do is we want to check what the lessons are. So after you experience the root cause of whatever emotion that client has come to me for, so something's happened in their life, they want to get to the bottom of it, we ask their higher self to take them to the particular lifetime that it's relevant. We play out the scene or scenes in that lifetime. Then we watch them die, cross over, go to the light. Then we conduct a life review. It's part of the therapy. In the life review, we get the higher self to give them the perspective on what happened and why. Then we ask them for what are the limiting beliefs or vows that you made in this lifetime that are impacting your lifetime today. Then we work through that and release those beliefs and reframe them. And then, if it is required, we can then go see the soul council and get further clarification. I do separate soul council sessions for people who are wanting to know very strongly what is the purpose of their incarnation, and very strongly to know who are my soul family members, who are my soulmates, who in my current life am I incarnated with. That is part of the gang, so to speak.
I do believe that does come up quite a bit. And I was just about to ask you that, which I think many people will probably ask. Who in my current life have I been in a past life with before? And to take it a step further, is this my soul group? And soul groups can be pretty large, can't they?
They can be very large, but you have a small inner circle, so to speak. And the inner circle are the people who you incarnate with time and time again. Like every lifetime, there's going to be somebody from that group in your lifetime who will take on a different role. So depending upon what the objective of your incarnation is, they might come in as a great aunt. They may come in as a boyfriend. They might come in as a teacher at school. It depends upon the complexity of the situation and how much they need to be involved in that lifetime. But there's always somebody with you from your soul group. This is where people call things like kindred spirits, people that you just resonate with immediately. But it also can be the people that you really dislike, that you enter a relationship with, for example, that you hate. So it's a disastrous relationship. The reason that they may be your soul family members, your inner soul family members, is because you need to break a cycle. You need to do a particular piece of learning, like maybe you had a lifetime and you didn't do what you wanted to do because you've got free will in every lifetime. And you go back up, have your review, and you're like, oh, I was supposed to do this thing and I didn't do it again. And if you imagine it's like being at the pub with your mates and they're like, oh, for goodness sake, we tried to give you all these signs. Look, here's when we tried to show you. And you're like, oh. And then you'll say, all right, okay, I'll try one more time. Who's going to volunteer? And then Timmy will say, all right, I'm coming in and I'm going to give you a really hard time. And I just want you to remember that it's for your best interest. All right, great. And then you'll choose to go in together for your next time. So greater soul family members, you may see once every, 100 incarnations or whatever it is.
Okay, so that is an example of a soul agreement, soul contract, right? Which I've heard quite a few times. Let's talk about the eternal mind stream. My first impression would be, could that have something to do with the Akashic records, or is it something different, completely different?
So the eternal mind stream is your consciousness that exists in all lifetimes. The consciousness never turns off. So the Akashic records is the memory. People visualize it as a book. Imagine that your soul is given a book, and on the pages of the book is every lifetime that you ever have. So you can go into a place called the Akashic records to access your lifetimes. But I don't go into the Akashic records, so to speak. I just take people straight into a past life. We don't go use the book or whatever. We just direct the mind to the specific lifetime. So if you imagine that you start off as the soul, your soul is created, imagine like a sunflower or any flower that comes to your mind right now. Each one of the petals on the flower is a different lifetime, but your soul's in the middle. So you have the eternal mind stream is the memory of the soul, and the petals are the memories that are associated with each lifetime. You never ever lose the petals. They are intact personality types that belong to the soul. So when we are directing the eternal mind stream to find a lifetime, we're asking it to search its own database and find the petal that's relevant.
So it's a database. So it's not the Akashic records, but it's just another route, another way to get the information that you want, what you're trying to find. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't have to go to a physical place to access your mind stream, because the eternal mind stream is energy. It doesn't exist. It doesn't belong anywhere. It's part of all that is.
You deal largely with past lives and life in between lives, which many people don't really seem to know very much about, but it does seem to be getting more popular. So what about parallel lives and concurrent lives? Could our souls be living in more than one place at a time?
Yeah, so all lives are parallel because time is not linear, as we've already covered, but not all lives are concurrent. So that's what you're talking about. So you, as a soul, could decide to send 3 versions of you out right now.
Really?
So you could be alive in the same time zone as 3 other versions of yourself and not know. And that's because you have something very specific to do.
The reason I bring that up is because many people, including myself, report having dreams where you see these people and these surroundings. They're immediately familiar, but you've never physically met them before. Does that have anything to do with what you're talking about, meaning that would be concurrent lives, or is that purely imagination?
So the way that I would help somebody find that out is to go back and direct to that scene to see whether it's you concurrently residing at the same time, or whether it's a memory from a lifetime in a totally different time zone. A lot of people talk about the concept of a twin flame, which is the feminine masculine beginning of the soul where it splits away. You can access the memories of your twin flame sometimes, depending upon how in tune you are and in sync you are with the eternal mind stream. So it can be all of the above. We don't know until you go in and inquire.
So it sounds like one can learn quite a bit through these sessions about past lives and how those issues that are maybe unresolved are affecting them in this life. Right?
That's correct. Yes,
Yep.
Very much so.
Do you find that issues someone might have tried to remedy with a conventional therapist, which they had no luck with, were resolved in one of your sessions?
Absolutely. Totally. Because we're going to the root cause issue. So there's a place for talk therapy and normal therapy, but it can only work with the conscious mind. Yeah. The owner of all the memories, the superconscious mind, basically has the original memory. And so you may be trying to do something in your lifetime right now, and your subconscious mind may block you, but then also your superconscious mind may block you, because you might be one of these people who loves affirmations, and you might like to sprout off 1,000,000 affirmations about how rich and wonderful and sexy you're going to be. But your subconscious mind might say, look, no, you're not. Or you're okay. And then your superconscious mind may say, you're a fat ugly. And no matter what you do, the overarching belief system is in your superconscious mind based on all the lifetimes that you've had where there's been a very, very big emotional residue based on that belief system. And you cannot clear the conscious mind and have things manifest in your life as a reality until you've overcome the beliefs you have at the subconscious and the superconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is in charge of things that happen to you in this life, earlier in life, so that's where there's a lot of therapy that helps with what happened with earlier in your life, and I call that age regression. We take you back to a moment in time in your current life where something happened to you, someone said something to you, you perceived something this way. When you go to the superconscious mind, you go back and you say, well, how many lifetimes, take me to all the relevant ones one at a time, is this been an issue for me? And this might be to do with our physical appearance, like weight gain. It may be to do with money, so beliefs about wealth and about rich people, poor people. It may be about anything that you can possibly think of that's a stubborn belief system that you can't shift. The superconscious mind is the original memory. People can get super frustrated, and that's where they come to me. They're like, well, I've done all the work. I've studied with all these people who work with the subconscious mind. I'm still not getting there. I'm like, okay, great. Good for witnessing that and realizing that. Now let's take it back one step further. Let's go and see where this originated. When you deal with the root cause, you free the root cause memory, and then the subconscious is able to bring it forward to the conscious mind, and you're able to change your daily life. So yes, it's incredibly effective.
Okay. The work that you do with your clients when you go into life in between lives, do you tend to learn a lot more about the client situation there as opposed to the past lives, or is it roughly even?
I don't conduct them as separate sessions. I integrate all of the components all at once. I don't say to somebody, oh, you need a separate session to go to the Life Between Lives. If your mind wants to take you there, and especially if your spirit guides want to take you there, we incorporate it in. So we can do 5 minutes in the Life Between Lives to find out some information we haven't talked about yet. Spirit releasement therapy, all of my sessions, that's why I call it soul therapy now, include all of the elements so that we deal with what you need to know and answer your questions right now. I find that with the exception to the life review, because that's like just a non-negotiable, life review has to happen. Going to the soul council, for example, if I know somebody's coming up to, say they've booked a month of sessions with me and they're coming up to the final one, and I'm like, this person is still not doing what they said that they wanted to do. Let's go and see the council to get some resolution. I find it very effective as a last session because I can take them to see the moment before they incarnated and get them to show them the possibilities that they laid out. It's kind of like a spreadsheet. You sat down at a table and you laid out a few key possibilities for the outcomes of this lifetime. And you also laid out a few exit points, so potentials where you might die and go back to the light. Once they've seen these options and they see where they almost died or could have left, they get very certain clarity about which one of those options they wish to see and which one they don't. So it's like a real wake-up call because they're like, okay, I can see that there is an opportunity here where if I don't do anything about what I'm doing, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to die. And this option here, which I've set, this is the one that I want. I want to be this person. And it sort of ties up and brings to the forefront a real visual, visceral experience for them so that when they wake up out of the session, they're like, oh, now I understand why I was feeling this way. And right, I'm ready to just go and do that thing.
You mentioned exit points. So does that have anything to do with getting a glimpse of, I think you did mention they could have died? Mm-hmm. Or were you referring, so that's what that was. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I read about this and I don't like to speculate, but I believe it was one of the books that had to do with life between lives. And apparently our souls have 3 exit points. If we skip over the first 2, the last one is non-negotiable. Is there any substance of that, or is that neither here nor there?
I don't know because I haven't had a client that's got to that exit point. Do you know what I mean? Most of the people that I've done those sessions with, it's like, oh, the exit point will be around 92. They're not 92 yet. They're only 50 or whatever. Ask me in 40 years' time at the end of my career and I'll be able to say, yes, she died exactly on time. I guess exit points can change at any time in my belief, and I'm willing to be right or wrong about this because you have free human will, right? So at any time you can make a decision to cross that road and accidentally step in front of a car and you're like, oh, shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got free will, you know, and everyone else is like, we were trying to give you this amazing career and you had this book to publish and you stepped out on the road. And you're like, oh. It's not like fate is completely predetermined because you have free will. You can change your mind at any time, and changing the mind is where you shift timelines, shift trajectories. This is just an overarching framework of what you had desired as a soul. Most of us, we don't necessarily achieve the thing that we came to achieve, and that's okay. But some people are very, very particular about and have a real knowing that there's a particular thing that they're here for, and they're the kind of people that come and book sessions because they're like, I've got this knowing. Help me.
A knowing. Okay. It seems that you do have quite a bit of contact with spirit guides in various different sessions. Is it true that they can actually have a sense of humor?
Yes.
I've heard that more than once. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Basically, if your so-called spirit guide doesn't have a sense of humor, you're not talking to a real spirit guide.
Really? That I've never heard before.
Enlightened beings are light of mind. They are playful. They crack jokes with you. Not all of them are going to be completely playful. So, for example, the best example I have of that is Archangel Michael. He is sarcastic, very sarcastic, in a playful way. If your spirit guide talks negatively to you, makes you feel heavy or down, they're not your spirit guide. They're a negative energy being. There are so many fake spirit guides out there, it's not funny. What I teach people when they go to the Life Between Lives to meet their spirit guides is how to verify a real spirit guide, because it can have devastating consequences. If you're interacting with a negative being and taking advice from somebody who doesn't have your best intention, you can cause chaos in your own life. So I teach them to viscerally, and we call it a game. The spirit guides love games. And we do the test. The test is, can you look into their eyes? Will they allow you to see their eyes? Really. Secondly, I take them to an imaginary pot of salt, like an old-fashioned one that your grandma had with a little spoon. And I'm like, right, you're going to fling that salt on that spirit guide. A real spirit guide's going to laugh and think that's hilarious. They might put up an umbrella or dust it off or a raincoat or whatever. A fake spirit guide is going to get tense, and then that salt is going to interact with them. And about after a minute or 2 minutes, they're going to dissolve.
Okay, fake spirit guide. Is this a malevolent spirit, or is it just someone who just likes to push our buttons, or somewhere in between there?
Somewhere in between the two, yeah. There are fake angels. Basically, when you're dealing with the spirit world, you have to be very sure that you know that a being comes from the light versus a being that hasn't crossed over, that is stuck in the astral realms. So most negative energy wants to have a second chance at life, and it will do anything that it can to influence you so that it can play out what it didn't achieve in its lifetime. And that energy will feel heavy. They won't look into your eyes. They won't have a playful attitude. And if you ask them, have you come from the light, they will not be able to answer. They will say, if they do answer, the light will burn or harm me or hurt me. We don't want to go towards the light. They've got a very heavy feeling. And you have to be careful, because there's the other distinction, which is they should be warm to touch. So I say to my clients in this state, hold out your hand. This spirit guide, so-called spirit guide, is going to touch your hand. Now, if they say to me it's cold, we go do the salt test immediately, because cold is not good. It has to be warm to touch. The only circumstances in where cold can possibly be okay is if it is cold in terms of it's a galactic being, and then that's a whole different set of inquiry we go down. A lot of people, like these negative spirit beings, are very clever. They basically put on a fake costume to look like who you think they're going to look like. And that's why we need to teach people to do the test, because they may make you feel as though they're some wise being, but they're not actually this wise being. And I have a lot of clients who are very tricked by these spirit guides. They think they've been talking to somebody wonderful. So, for example, in a client session yesterday, which I did tape for the podcast, so I'm allowed to mention it, she practiced meditating and going to meet this wise woman who had all these crystals and wonderful things. She ain't no wise woman with beautiful crystals, because I got her to touch the crystals, and the crystals were rotted, broken, burnt trees. The facade was removed from this woman, and she was a spirit who had not crossed over, who was angry because she had died in a fire, and so she wanted the earth to burn because she was still angry.
Let's talk about spirit releasement. You've touched on that several times. I've heard lots of different things. In this case, let's say you're with a client, right? You're in a session. You go through the past lives. You go into the in-between space, and sometimes you will encounter beings that have not crossed over. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you send them to the light? What do you do with them?
Yeah. So if it's a really nasty being, I can call in the spiritual police, who will cross them over. They will just send them back to source. But I'm not an exorcist. I believe in simple, upfront, heartfelt communication and showing all beings that they come from the light. So spirit releasement therapy happens when we do basically a body scan. We check to see what you're holding on in your body that is not your own, or is your own, that needs to be released. So emotions, thoughts, and we check the thought. So just say you've got this big heavy feeling on your shoulder or your neck, or you've got a lump underneath your breast or something like that, and we check the origination of that. And so that can be something from your previous part of early in your life that's a negative comment that somebody said to you that you embodied, you took it on, and we can release that and send it to the light. But then we can look below that and say, is there anything else there? If that feeling, that hot spot could say something, what would it say? And then usually they will come back with words, and I'll be like, okay, hi, my name is Katische. I'm benevolent. I come in peace. I'm just wanting to hear your story. Who are you? What's your name? And then they would tell me their name if they were formerly a human being. So I also were you formerly a human being? If the answer is yes, it's easy. I then talk to them and say, okay, so you are with Caitlin. You're in Caitlin's body. How did you meet her? And tell me your story. I know you're probably feeling lost and alone and lonely, possibly even angry. What happened to you? Do you remember? Sometimes they know straight away. and sometimes they don't. And we get them to check their mind streams. It could be simply something like, for example, there was this gentleman, Jerry. He died in 1962 at the age of 32. He was just playing basketball with himself, bouncing the ball on the court, throwing a few hoops, and he'd had a heart attack and died. He didn't see the light. So a lot of times people don't see the light, which is what all human beings have to do when they die. You look for the light. Nobody tells you that, but you need to look for the light. And depending upon your beliefs, religious or otherwise, you will see a bridge, an angel, a dove, or a tunnel with a light at the end of it. You need to go towards that light, and that's how you get to the afterlife, or whatever you want to call the space that exists afterwards. If you're afraid at the time of the death, if you get a shock at the time of the death, or if you feel like you're not ready to go, or if you have a feeling of regret, remorse, or you're afraid of hell, you won't cross over. And when you don't cross over, you become what we colloquially call a ghost or an earthbound spirit or a disincarnated human being. You are then only energy, which is a thought form. You are just pure consciousness that stays in the astral realms. You stay there until you have your own free will and you realize that you want to cross over, or until somebody crosses you over. Nobody's going to make you cross over. If you don't believe in the afterlife, you will stay stuck in the astral realms. And so what happens is that you stay there. You become invisible to everybody. Unless somebody has the ability to hear or see the earthbound spirits, nobody knows you're there. You then fester in what religion likes to call hell or purgatory, which is this state where there are other beings, both human and thought form, who are all lost. They don't understand why they're not with their family, why they can't talk. They feel like the moment before the impact that they died. So if somebody stabbed them, they're in pain or whatever. And they are surrounded by negative thought form beings who are created by all the negative energy and the negative thoughts that we have as human beings that are stuck. They wait for the ability to find somebody who's of similar energy to them. So, oh, you look like my grandma. Oh, you've walked past the hospital and I died near here, and you've been smoking weed and I can see your defenses are down, so I'm going to go and attach to you. Your aura is wide open. Or you're walking past a pub. I don't drink alcohol anymore once I learned this. You're walking past the pub and you've had 17 drinks that evening because you started drinking at 6, and you are in another state of consciousness. So a ghost can attach to you then because you're an open being. And the ones that attach to you, there's something that they can see. Maybe they see themselves in you. Maybe they're like your brother. Maybe you were in the army and they were in the army and it's similar. Or maybe you're a bright white light to them. You have compassion and there's something that they believe gives them the right, and they will attach and become part of you. Most common is family members who don't want to leave behind their other family members. If you have extended grief, if you're unwilling to let your loved one go to the light, as in, I'm not going to cope without them, I can't keep on going without them, what am I going to do, can't believe they died, you're literally pulling them down energetically, pulling them and keeping them down from crossing over. Or if somebody has guilt towards you, oh, I should have been nicer to them, I regret something, they may stay around with the mistaken understanding that they can influence and help them. A lot of the times, earthbound spirits are those who are angry and they want to be given another chance at life, so they're going to influence you. So they merge with your energy stream, and here's the interesting part. They then get to influence your mind stream. Some people who so-called have split personalities or dissociative personalities actually have a lot of earthbound spirits attached because you hear their thought stream in your mind. It's not quiet in your mind. So if your mind has 100 different conversations going at once, or if your mind is continually negative at you or berating or telling you dumb, you're stupid, has a lot of depressed, down, sad or angry thoughts, there's quite a possibility that they're not your thoughts. They belong to the person who is attached to you. And once they are released to the light, there's this amazing silence in your head that is just profound and beautiful. And you only hear the voice of your higher self and the voice of your personality. The voice of your higher self is complete, pure love and bliss. And you don't have such heightened states of emotion. I just did a session yesterday for someone because she made a comment. There's always these noises, voices in my head, it's constantly busy. And most people disbelieve that they could possibly even have an attached spirit. And it's not until we identify and they finish the session and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea it was so noisy inside my head. Oh, I'm not a bad person, or I'm not my thoughts.
You're not your thoughts. Yeah. Interesting. So we know that earthbound spirits are a real thing. What about spirits that have gone to the light? Can they be present with us here on earth, even though they've already gone to the light?
Yes. Anytime that you think of somebody in your life that has gone to the light and you have a wish or a desire to communicate with them, like you have a memory, in essence, you're pulling them back, right? Because your loved ones don't cease to exist. They're off doing other incarnations, but they will always be there for you. In reality, your spirit guides are always behind and beside you. They never, ever leave your side. And family members, when you need them, it's like you think of them, ask for their help, and they will send their energy and they will come towards you. For example, my father died 11 years ago. I know because he had a particular cologne that I absolutely loved. I still have the bottle here. I have 2 sons, so they have it. And how I know my dad is in the room, how he's come to help me, is if I am emotionally upset about something that has some kind of connection to him. I will get the very distinct smell of the cologne waft into the room and come up to my nose, so much so that I'll look around and see if one of my kids has put that cologne on. They won't be in the house, and I'm like, no, they're not here. And that's when usually you'll get quite an emotional feeling when you connect that aroma that you associated with that person is here, and then you will feel the tingles. You feel their energy. And generally what happens then is you will feel washed over by calmness as they impart a healing, loving energy towards you. The difference between knowing whether an energy is an attachment, a spirit inside your head, or one that has gone to the light and is coming back to help you as a guide or a loving figure. The one that is inside your head that is attached to you, you can hear very clearly as if it was your own voice what they're saying to you, because it becomes part of your voice. The ones that are crossed over and healed and just coming back to tell you a message, it's like, is that Dad? I'm not sure. It's a really loving, peaceful energy. I can't quite hear the words, but I get a general sense or feeling about it. The one that's in your head, it's like they're rude, they're angry, they're telling you haven't done something, they're berating you, they're reminding you how stupid you are, or I told you to do that already and you haven't done it. Or a lot of the critical negative self-talk we have about ourselves is not ourselves.
It's pretty amazing that you can take someone into a session and cover that much ground and that much information. But one of the things I never really quite got is, why isn't this kind of therapy more popular than it is? Or do you think that it's going to become more prevalent in the future?
Because human beings are afraid of death, right? We've just been through COVID, right? What was COVID about? Death. COVID was about the fear of death. We had an incredible number of people die during that period of time. We became afraid of it, forgetting the whole narrative of COVID is a fear of death. COVID attacked the lungs, which is where we store grief. So COVID was about humanity's grief. We have had a context of, it doesn't matter which religion you look at, religion over time has imposed certain beliefs about life after death. Religion has set for us our morality that we try to live our standards by. And generally speaking, irrespective of the religion, there have been rules. These rules have told us how to act and tried to keep us in a fear-based state, which says if you don't follow these rules, you're a bad person and you're going to hell or whatever. So we're afraid of death because, well, what if I was a bad person? What if I skipped my Hail Marys one time, or I didn't go to church on Sunday, or heaven forbid, you got a divorce? Oh, I'm going straight to hell. So at the time of death, as a human civilization, we're not even comfortable yet with the fact that you may have a terminal illness and want to end your life, because we cling to there's only one lifetime and there's only the here and now, and it's lights out after that. Because this nihilistic approach, which says there's nothing after, is something to be afraid of, because nobody doesn't want to exist anymore. And there hasn't been open discussions. We don't teach people how to die. The whole hospice movement hasn't been given much focus. I've worked for a hospice because my own father needed palliative care when he died. We don't talk about how do we know when the body's ready to die? How do we look for the signs? How do we deal with the fear that your loved one is going through when they're ready to die? And then what do we do to make them ready for die? The only religion that I've studied that does this specifically is Buddhism. It goes very specifically into the rituals associated with death and helps prepare, tells people what to look out for. But simply at the end of the day, irrespective of religion or non-religion, you just have to look for the light. And until we can have those grown-up conversations about the fact that you don't stop existing and that there's nothing to be afraid of, it's not lights out, then humanity is going to continually be afraid of dying. Religion has used exorcism as a way to release spirits, for example, religiously. What that does, though, is it puts the fear, living daylight into you, because you must be possessed. So therefore, you are becoming an evil person. So far, 95% of my conversations with even spirits that are purporting to be evil are human beings who have suffered frightful deaths, who are afraid and have just been surrounded by negative energy for so long that they want to feel bad and make everyone else feel bad. When we look at it from a human perspective, we can have compassion.
Right. And that's typical. Many people who are miserable feel better when they can make other people feel bad as well. I get the feeling we've definitely opened up a different can of worms here, so to speak, and I think there's probably going to be a part 2. Katish, thanks for joining us. How can our listeners find you online?
Everything leads back to my website, which is just my name, KATISCHE.com, Katish.com. And then you can link to everything else from there.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. For more info, go to closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.